Please know that this video will go into heavy spoilers when I reach the story portion of this deep dive video, as I feel that this is not really a deep dive if the story is not a main focus of this series. And with that out of the way, let's get it started. If you had told me 7 years ago that an unknown developer was going to bring us a franchise that combined puzzles and God of War-like combat, and it would have gone on to be one of my favorite series of the last console generation, I more than likely would have told you were lying to me. Visual Games, a new studio in the video game industry, along with the now shut down publisher, THQ, exposed consumers to a wonderfully crafted IP known as Darksiders. A game which made an odd first impression in its early hours of gameplay by streamlining its combat to basic button combos and not much more. It borrowed heavy influences from hack and slash titles like God of War and long-form dungeon puzzles in the vein of titles like The Legend of Zelda, combining the two to create a satisfying hybrid that, while critically received, didn't reach the sales it needed to make a huge dent in the video game industry. Its successor, properly named Darksiders II, sought out to change that. THQ and Visual wanted to establish a truly special sequel, substituting War, the protagonist from the first installment, with one of his brothers, Death. Visual decided to have Darksiders II take place before the beginning of the original, during War's 100-year imprisonment, and having Death looking to clear War's name, and in turn having him released from his prison. Darksiders II embraces a larger world filled with awesome moments, making the sequel a worthy investment of time, despite a slew of performance issues in the remaster.
To bargain for War's freedom, Death swore that he would resurrect humanity. But he knew not how this might be done. And so Death rode forth into the icy veil to find the Keeper of Secrets.
This deep dive video is going to be a little bit different from the previous ones. I spent over 18 hours playing Darksiders 2 and have a lot of positive things to say about it, which I'll get to in a moment, but first I feel that it's important to notate the biggest problem I have with the game, as it has altered my opinion more since first starting this re-release. This is not the definitive, or in this case, Deathinitive edition of this game. The game is marred heavily by performance issues, mainly surrounding the frame rate. It drops constantly, and for a remaster that is running on a next-gen console, the Xbox One in my case, you'd assume that the game would run smoothly on the hardware, especially when put up next to the previous Darksiders remaster, which never dropped frames once in my experience. The sound would frequently cut out or be delayed during many moments, both when it came to intense action-oriented moments to more subtle story-driven parts.
I will ride with you, horseman, even unto the Lord.
Furthermore, one of the game's many stellar boss battles glitched out on me, forcing me to restart the fight all over again.
See what you can find.
But the worst part of it all, the part that really put a strain on my enjoyment of this almost amazing game, is the fact that it crashed on me not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but 4 times at seemingly random moments when there wasn't even an intense scene or heavy combat sequence with hordes of enemies on the screen that regardless wouldn't warrant the strain on the console because it's a remaster and it shouldn't be struggling performance-wise, but nevertheless, it still managed to fail 4 separate times, forcing me to restart the game and load back into the world.
What can you tell me about this place?
I've been here but the once. The time.
A remaster of an almost 5-year-old game that had few complications on the technical side of things, being somehow worse than said original, is almost unheard of and shouldn't be given a pass. I should be infuriated with what seems like a lack of effort on Nordic and Gunfire Games who handled the remaster, but for some reason, I couldn't put this game down. I don't know what it is, but something about its design struck a chord with me and made me motivated to press forward, eagerly awaiting to see what was next despite all the hoops I had to jump through until completion of the game. In terms of gameplay, Darksiders 2 successfully expands on just about every idea introduced in Visual Games' first outing with War through God of War-like combat, Legend of Zelda-inspired dungeons, and Prince of Persia-esque platforming. The front-running system reworked for the sequel is most definitely the combat. More than a few elements have been tuned for the better. Starting off with the camera and lock-on mechanic first brought to our attention in the original game, the lock-on feature makes its return using the same left trigger to target enemies while using the right thumbstick to switch between said targets. This component is essential this time around because of how close the camera is to death when engaged in combat scenarios. You can't necessarily see each beast around you unless you combat roll your way around the arena, being sure to memorize your opposition's whereabouts, so the lock-on is there to assist you in finding a target to attack while also displaying the health and name of the current adversary your camera is attached to. Additionally, the amount of damage you are dealing is demonstrated via numbers with certain colors or effects showing what kind of damage you are bringing to the table. If this text display becomes too cluttered for your taste, you can turn it off in the options menu to avoid irritation. Death is equipped with both a primary and secondary weapon. The primary is reserved for Death's iconic scythe, but instead of it being one large scythe, it is a pair of scythes that interlock to make one large scythe during combos. They're fast and effective, cutting through multiple enemies with gritty animations, which can be interrupted with an agile dodge roll to get you out of difficult scenarios. Secondary weapons, on the other hand, are reserved for more heavy weapons like a hammer, axe, or mace, which certainly take longer to swing across the battlefield, but deal a considerable amount of damage. Or you can equip lighter weapons like gauntlets or arm blades, which are fast and do a lot of damage with each consecutive strike landed. Each has useful qualities, it just depends on where your preferences lie. This isn't the same weapon system as the first installment, as weapons are frequently swapped out because of the Borderlands-inspired loot system. Gone is the original Darksiders with set weapons with enhancements that can affect play in minor ways. Every weapon has stats associated with it, ranging from how much damage it does, to elemental effects such as fire, frost, shock, and ice, to the chance of performing a critical hit or execution. This provides flavor to the combat and allows the player to experiment with different styles of play to find what will suit them best in most combat scenarios. In my playthrough, I spent a majority of my time fiddling around between heavy and light weapons until I found a pair of arm blades that would freeze any enemy, including bosses. It would be only until I discovered the joy of swinging a giant shock-infused axe and electrocuted everything standing in my path. The loot finds can bring so much joy to anyone that enjoys hunting for the next best piece of gear in the game. Death himself can be kitted with different armor, like shoulders, boots, chest, and arms, to be better suited for battles. These stats include health, strength, and resistance among others. Continuing, high-level gear found called possessed weapons here can be upgraded by sacrificing other loot and feeding it to that specific item. Once enough gear has been traded for an upgrade, you can then choose a different way of enhancing the item, increasing its strength, its arcane damage, or raising the likelihood of being able to perform an execution or landing a critical hit on an opponent. These particular weapons can be obtained from either a random drop or by a purchase with a special form of currency from Fulgrim, the merchant demon who makes a return in this installment. Speaking of currency, souls are no longer used for trading. Instead, it's a form of coin known here as gilt, and tokens found while scavenging dungeons and other areas you meander through. I never had an issue with running low on this because I would always sell my useless loot, and in turn, it would provide me with more than enough money to stay afloat and not worry about having to save for a specific item that I really wanted. Traders sell gear for you to outfit your death with. These range from every weapon and armor type to the health and wrath potions that you can buy. No more collecting wrath and health souls through encounters, although you can, but only through stat boosts found in equipment. Instead, there are the previously mentioned purchasable potions that restore a large portion of your health and wrath. These can also be picked up by destroying crates and pots in the environment and dungeons, making for a more manageable and less frustrating system, where before you had to hope that you could get health off an execution, or find a chest containing health or wrath souls. Not only can death be outfitted with armor and weapons, but there is also a skill tree in place that allows you to further tailor your gameplay experience. Skills are cherry-picked from, and can be mapped to a bumper and face button combo to create very flashy and high damaging moves. There are two separate trees, one focused on more physically damaging moves, and one leaning towards the use of arcane spells. Both are viable options, and I chose to stick with the more physical option since it worked better with my choice of play. Whichever you choose, you can count on some flashy blows to your opponent. Your attackers have also seen improvements. Enemies now attack with more than one at any given time, and there's a larger pool of contenders for you to cut down throughout the campaign. It keeps things fresh until completion, offering new tactics to think about when engaging in conflicts. New enemies also means new executions, and here in Darksiders 2, they are much less frequent compared to the original Darksiders, where just about every demon and angel was able to be eviscerated with the simple push of a button. In fact, these ostentatious moves are almost a rarity. Executions are now tied to a stat where your chances of being able to perform the admittedly cool moves are slim unless you have a piece of gear with a high enough execution rate to see them more often throughout Death's journey. When all of these systems combine, it becomes a very flexible system that allows the player the freedom of choice in all the decisions in relation to how they play the game until the credits roll. Moving from there, we have dungeons, and once again, they are heavily reminiscent of the Legend of Zelda games. Dungeons are lengthy and are loaded with multiple puzzles to solve and enemies to slash your way through. Puzzles are never too difficult and rarely overstay their welcome, using the tools you acquire on your way to the final boss in interesting ways. Some in particular are very creative, and I never would have thought of them had I not been messing around with some of the game's lineaments. The tools at your disposal have also seen some creativity injected into them. One standout example of this is in the Soul Splitter ability, allowing Death to essentially split himself into two soul-based forms, one green and one purple, while his original wholesome form remains a statue of a Grim Reaper-like image that most people have associated Death with. While the ability to split yourself in two is great in concept, the execution is where it counts, and the puzzles excel when implementing cooperative-like dilemmas into a single-player adventure. That's just one ability, there are a few others. The Death Grip works like the grapple hook from War's Voyage through Redemption, only here it's incorporated into platforming, which I'll get to here shortly. The ability is also used for puzzle solving, as you can use it to pull items towards you that you aren't able to reach by simply walking or climbing up to them. It isn't all new items though. The first game had a gadget called the Void Walker, which boiled down to a portal gun that could be shot into designated surfaces in the levels that you explored. It makes a return here and comes with the additional upgrade in the form of the Phase Walker, which now not only allows you to create portals in the environment, but will also allow you to travel back in time to solve pockets of puzzles that you can't complete otherwise. Once you reach the end of the dungeon, you're greeted by one of Darksiders 2's numerous bosses. Some of these guys are absolutely breathtaking, like this one here. and some of them are a little more manageable to defeat. After a dungeon has concluded, you'll be greeted with a completion text and some XP and currency. I have one minor gripe with the dungeons in this game, and that is the find 3 of this rule. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's when in a game, you have to find 3 specific items or activate 3 levers or switches. It's this formula that can start to drain on you when you go through the areas looking for the same item 3 times and eventually feels like unaltered gameplay. Thankfully, some of the tedium is broken up by the platforming sections. There is a huge emphasis of this in some of the locations that Darksiders 2 has to offer, and makes some of the thrilling moments that the game has. This is also the final major aspect of the gameplay, as Death acrobatically navigates his way through the series of locales until the end. It's all very fluid, and the controls are intuitive and make everything flow without stutter, so it makes you feel as Death is exceptionally smooth with his movements. You'll fuse this platforming with your death grip, using it to reach the next wall mount you need to progress to the next area. It just works, and rarely would I find that Death wouldn't go where I intended him to. Every inch of the game has been designed to work without any issues within the much larger world of Darksiders 2. The world is so much bigger this go around. Using 4 different maps to see it all, the world that Death wanders through is a joy to go through, using the lore of the angels and demons to enhance the style of each area. In particular, the area Lost Light is absolutely gorgeous. The colors used to accentuate the feeling of being in this angelic land, while also hinting at a much more sinister behind the scenes effect, is mesmerizing. The demon world is the complete opposite, menacing and all dark. I especially love the black hole sucking up debris, while Death rides on ever so calm. You'll explore these locations and more as Death rides on his pale horse Despair. Death is also accompanied by his crow, Dust, who will point him to the right direction without letting him know how to solve a puzzle or what's behind the door. He's simply there to guide you along your path, similar to the Watcher in the first game. In general, gameplay is just bigger and better in just about every way, and holding it all together, it's a story about a horseman trying to prove his brother's innocence.
But what of the other horsemen? Fearless enforcers of the Council's will. What of fury, strife, and death? To know those names, you must first know another. Nephilim. Cursed union of angel and demon.
Where the previous game had lore and story, it could be argued that it wasn't used to its maximum potential, and the game suffered because of it. With Darksiders 2, Vigil sought to rectify this and use the opportunity to explore more of the backgrounds for the characters in the Darksiders universe, especially the origin of the 4 horsemen and diving into how they came to be. Death and his fellow horsemen are Nephilim, beings that were created by the demon Lilith with physical appearances of that of a human. They have incredible strength and other abilities. They are an ancient race, survived only by the 4 horsemen as the rest were slaughtered during a Nephilim assault on Eden, which would have been a success for them had the 4 horsemen not gained power from the Charred Council in exchange for their lifelong service. With this power, the horsemen and the angels went on to eradicate every Nephilim, their souls encased in an amulet and forever sealed away within it. This is all established in the opening cutscene, as we discover that Death is on a mission to rescue War from captivity by proving his innocence, and along the way, his progress is halted again and again from many different personalities that he encounters who either want something from him, or of course, want to stop him.
Your realm hardly needs more subjects.
True. Yet I must face this rabble without the lords who serve me.
That's not my concern.
Make it your concern, and I will grant your request. Find my 3 dead lords, and wake them from their slumber. This will bend them to your will. Return the lords to me, that they might share my burden.
Some of these include the Makers, giant men and women who have the access to forge weapons of wonderment. We also learn that this is the same group of people that Ulthane, the one who crafts War's pistol in the first game, is a part of.
And the realm will be better for it, whether pure as rain or black as sin. The tears will end this stalemate.
And who is Ulthane?
He's just another maker. Has a big hammer is all. When he escaped, I feared to follow. And a good thing, too.
And why is that?
Well, you might still be looking for the cauldron if not for my courage and wit.
The demon Vulgrim makes a return as one of the traveling merchants. He is given less to do here, and simply exists just to sell death items to make slaughtering his foes easier.
Come closer. See what Vulgrim has to offer. Greetings, horseman, and welcome. I've been expecting you.
Vulgrim. What brings you crawling out of the shadows?
I wouldn't want to lose my most valuable customer. Not to what lurks at the edge of shadows.
No more going to him for serpent holes. Instead, there is now a fast travel system within the map. Vulgrim is not the only one to make a guest appearance. You'll meet Uriel the Hellguard and the sister in adventures on Earth along the way. Characters like the Crowfather, the Lord of Bones, and Absalom make their debut here, and are more interesting than the characters in the previous Darksiders like Abaddon and the Destroyer.
Pale Rider.
The return of mankind.
To a barren planet shorn of life. Oh, humans are weak and simple. They would not survive this resurrection, nor do they deserve it.
That is not ours to judge. I do this to spare war from the Council's punishment.
And what of the Nephilim? Would you save but one and not the rest?
You'll communicate with all these characters at some point, and most of these conversations will be through a dialogue wheel in the vein of Mass Effect, where you take a thumbstick and point it to your next choice of words. It gets the job done, as it will give you more story and lore should you choose to dive into it, but the cutscenes suffer in a minor way because of the camera just hopping back and forth between Death and whoever he is interacting with. During these moments, you can accept side quests that either involve fetching an item of interest to the quest giver, or a boss battle in a smaller dungeon. Obviously, the boss battles are more entertaining of the two, but still, some of these fetch quests can lead you astray to new, albeit smaller dungeons. There is no shortage of content here to explore, and Darksiders 2 makes sure there's plenty to come back to, and every time you boot up a save, a feature called The Journey So Far will remind you of your most recent main story event that has been completed, narrated by the Crowfather's shivering voice, and is accompanied by silhouetted art.
So far. A grand arena gilded by blood, a giant slain, a toll paid in full. But before the king will help our rider, he must have his dead court.
The story will take you to some amazing locations, with great scenery to stop and take in. However, by the end of it all, you're left with the feeling of wanting more answers. That's not to say that the story is bad. In fact, I actually found the tale quite enjoyable. Death is charismatic and intimidating, cracking a joke that seems oddly befitting of him, while at the same time, still giving off the vibe of fear that you'd expect from someone of his caliber. All of his wit and terror makes him a force to be reckoned with. Antagonists make their intentions known, and Absalom, your main threat through it all, gets the job done as being the big villain, although there is more entertaining opposition in the storyline, such as demons like the returning Samael.
So, the Chad Council sends only one horseman, even to the past. No, this visit is unsanctioned. In fact, no one knows you're here.
And the well-designed fallen angel, the Archon.
Bear the key! May the light of all that is holy destroy you!
Regardless, all the main bosses are challenging in a good way. Ultimately, Darksiders 2 expansion on the lore and story is a welcome addition to the universe and builds on the foundation that the first game started and brings us uncharted territory by setting the game in an entirely different realm of existence. But the setting and world is where the game truly shines. Taking place over 4 large, expansive maps, with a couple detours through DLC and challenge arenas, which we will get to in a bit, this new realm dishes out new and exciting uncharted territory for your eyes to behold. Starting off in the frostbitten area of the Vale, all the way to the corrupted Tree of Life, where the final boss resides. Vigil is taking you on a wild and varied trip through many locations, filled to the brim with wonderful vistas and creative beasts. One thing that sticks out in my mind as something that's just plain intriguing is that there are 2 opposite sides to the tree, one called the Tree of Life and the other the Tree of Death. Without a doubt, my favorite moment in this game is riding the spare up to the Tree of Life only to be transported to the other side, and taking the long ride down the opposite side to be greeted by a complete 180 in terms of aesthetic. What was once an area flowing with green grass and blue skies is now replaced with grays and more grays, as the background is filled with the skeletons of some giant monsters, and the reanimated bones of the dead are now out to kill you. It's just a nice transition when you dive into a portal from tranquility and enter a new dimension of chaos. A couple other highlights are when you reach the Eternal Throne and must climb and clamber your way to the deck of the ship that the Lord of Bone waits on, or when you enter Lost Light and are greeted with quietness and just know that something's not right, even though the orange and yellow hazy skies would have you believe otherwise. These are just a couple of standout junctures that you'll be taken on. Collectibles and other secrets litter the world and will take you time to amass every single one. There is even an achievement dedicated to accumulating everything that is possible to get. Vigil nailed this aspect of Darksiders 2. It is the definition of bigger and better in a good way. The only flaw that can be found in the setting is that there isn't much to do in terms of exploration. Sure, there are the previously mentioned collectibles and secrets, but outside of that, there isn't much to do other than the main quest and side quest. I don't need my map overloaded with icons, but I would have enjoyed more reason to ride through the areas presented to me. Still, there is enough to keep the completionists occupied for a while. They'll just have to go digging for it a little more. Alright, here we go. Let me get this out of the way. Darksiders 2's art style is breathtaking. There is an astonishing amount of detail here, and while I have no complaints about the style and pizzazz of the graphics, besides the previously mentioned frame rate drops, which, don't get it twisted, irritated me on more than one occasion, but it was nothing compared to the sound issues that I was having. Also, I'm not blaming Vigil for any of the technical issues here, as they are no longer a studio. Gunfire Games, which includes former Vigil developers as part of their team, has taken a game that had very few issues technically speaking, and made it somehow have more problems. No remaster should have the issues that I'm about to list, starting with the sound. While sound effects are satisfying to hear when you pull off executions and stab demons left and right, there is this thing where the sound just doesn't want to keep up with what is actually happening. What I mean is there will be points where characters are talking but their lips aren't in sync with what they are saying, which isn't a major annoyance. No, the major annoyance comes into play when the same problem occurs during boss battle cutscenes. The most noteworthy one comes in right after one of the best boss battles in the game, with the Guardian.
no choice but to bring him back.
How many times would you have to kill him?
The Guardian will be as a newborn, free of corruption.
That right there bothered me because not only did it ruin the impact of the kill, but it also ruined the scene following where two characters are interacting, but I couldn't hear anything because the sound that was supposed to be playing during the end of the boss battle was then playing after the scene had already finished. That's just one example, there are several others, so after a while of this happening I just became annoyed but numb to it, which shouldn't happen. As far as headaches go, that and the issues I addressed in the opening of this video are basically the extent of it. Positives do outweigh the negatives as sound has seen improvements. The effects of Death's blades slicing through enemies is just as destructive as you would imagine. Sliding from each target as they're thrown up in the air for juggle combos, or thrown back against arena walls as you end their lives in a vicious manner. All the sound effects and musical charms are a pleasure to hear, informing you of the progress you're making as one by one they fall and as you clear puzzle after puzzle, being told that you are ready to move on to the next via a charm like this. Arguably the most memorable part in the sound and graphics department is the soundtrack. It is absolutely euphoric, especially during the periods of time where you walk and explore the different places that you'll stumble upon. Jesper Kid's score is a wonder to listen to, as the music is more peaceful than one might expect coming into a game where you play as the horseman Death, who proceeds to annihilate anything standing in between him and his end goal, but regardless, it fits with the world more so than the character, and I'm perfectly okay with that. One piece of sound that does fit the character is the voice acting. Michael Wincott does an exceptional job as the voice of Death. He sounds calm and collected most of the time, except for when situations demand his rage to be revealed. He delivers lines that require sarcasm, wit, anger, and sometimes serenity.
I don't know what you are, but I'm grateful. My soul is free.
Hunter, your soul was never captive. Belial admitted that he had no power to take it.
You tricked me? I gave the others up for nothing?
There's a chance that the humans escaped the Demon Lord.
That's not possible.
I must be certain. You're not coming along.
No. I can't live with what I've done. Death. As long as you're here.
You wish to be taken now?
Please.
Very well.
If anyone stands out among the cast, it is without a doubt him. That's not to say that the voice actors for characters like the Crowfather, the Lord of Bones, Uriel, Samael, and Ostagoth don't do a great job at portraying emotions. They all do an admirable job in fact, but Death is the shining star in all of it. Graphically speaking, environments are pleasant to look at. From the greens of the Forgelands to the grays and browns of the Kingdom of the Dead. The backdrops of this venture are beautiful to ingest. Doors in the Kingdom of the Dead illuminate as Death slams them open with his ethereal purple arms. Chests are open with extreme force, as these same arms tear them open violently and forcing them to spill their contents. War and his horse Ruin were designed well, and the same goes for his brother in Despair. Despair leaks a soul-like trail of teal-colored skulls wherever he trots, and armor clinks against Death's body while showing off a wide variety of loot. There is tons of epic gear to be found, and each one looks unique, whether it be these arm blades that have a blue orb in the center or a mace engulfed with lava effects. Armor sets are equally fantastic. You can find these through random discoveries or by buying specific sets from traders in each hub. Everything is designed to look different from each other, and this is emphasized every time you load up a save state, as the menu will circle around your version of Death at different angles, encapsulating the unique Death that you have shaped and molded. All of these little bits and pieces total up to make Darksiders 2 complement its particular art style, and it propels its distinctness past other competitors in this genre of action-adventure hybrids. The remaster of Darksiders II contains all 3 DLC content packs. These pieces of content add dungeons set in different instances in the world, the first in a frozen tundra called Argyl's Tomb, the second in the Abyssal Forge filled with mechanical creations, and the third being set on the decimated streets of Earth, called Demon Lord Belial. Each DLC takes about an hour to complete, and doesn't offer anything in the way of new puzzle solving items, as one should expect going into a separate dungeon sealed off from the main campaign, but they do offer new and powerful loot. I'm going to cover these in the order of which I played them each. Argyl's Tomb follows Death as he lends Ostrogoth, the traveling merchant, a hand in defeating the guardian of the titular tomb. The puzzles don't offer too much in the challenge department, but the final boss is fun to face, and for some reason as I went through this dungeon, I got an insane amount of loot. I was able to sell so much of this loot that was kind of useless to me, but it did fetch a good price. That's basically the overall theme for this bundle of levels. A dungeon filled with enemies and varying degrees of challenging puzzles and some lore to learn. The Abyssal Forge follows Death as he meets one of the makers who is now deceased, but nonetheless gives Death the task of killing off one of his creations that has gone mad. The dungeon offers more in the way of difficult puzzles, but not much in the way of a difficult final boss, which is kind of disappointing. Still, the character known as the Mad Smith is entertaining to interact with, brief as it is.
Well, your broken mind is punishment enough, Smith. Don't make me regret my mercy.
Time to make a new masterpiece.
My favorite of the 3 is the last one that I played, mainly because of the story and lore that it brings to the table. You meet with Uriel once again, but more than that, you meet a human, known simply as the Hunter here. You learn of how and why he is still alive, and he assists you in your demon-slaying mission as you track down Belial. Belial himself is a difficult foe to battle against, as he does quite a bit of arcane damage while employing a neat trick that I'll leave you to figure out. At the conclusion of this dungeon though, you can't help but feel a bit of somberness in the atmosphere, and Death's voice lends a lot to the final scene. Overall, are these DLCs necessary? No, but do they add more fun Darksiders gameplay? Yes, and that's what matters to someone if they enjoy the game that much.
I've killed Absalom, stopped the corruption. I stand at last at the Well of Souls, with no idea what I must do next.
It took me a little over 18 hours to complete Death's journey with DLC included, and it does take longer to see and do everything in the world for the completionist. Darksiders 2 is a thrill to play, taking every complaint dished out in the first one and rebuilding itself to create a single player adventure that is stronger than the first in every aspect. Despite the technical issues that I experienced on my Xbox One remastered version, I still found a lot to love here. Even after completing the main quest, I found myself going back to do some more side activities in the missions and collecting some items of interest. Unlocking death tombs to find some intriguing new gear, and defeating bosses that are far from just being a generic reskin. I love this sequel and I love the franchise as a whole. Sadly, the second outing didn't hit the sales that it needed to when it was originally released, and the parent company of Vigil Games, THQ, was forced to sell off its franchises to different companies. I remember hoping that someone would come and pick up this line of games, but it became one of the last few games under THQ's belt to be freed from video game limbo. I wanted nothing more than to see the other 2 horsemen make their appearance, and eventually, Nordic Games picked up the IP, but for a while nothing came of it except for these remasters. Lucky for fans of the game, we got an announcement trailer on May 2nd of this year, and like me, many fans rejoice at the apparent revival of one of their beloved series. What we know so far is that the game follows Fury, the 3rd horseman and the only female one at that. I've kept myself away from most details, but I do know that with the people working on the project being comprised of mostly Visual Studio developers, I know that we are in for an exhilarating ride. Please show support by picking up both Darksiders and Darksiders 2. The end of the series could potentially come to a close with either a 4th or 5th game, completing an epic saga. Well guys, we made it. I'm sitting in my chair. I'm so happy I finally finished the voiceover. All that's left is editing, but you won't know that I didn't edit this part yet before I started recording. I just want to thank all 516 of you guys. I checked this morning. I'm at 516 subscribers from 440 when I uploaded my last light video. Thank you guys so much for the support and the feedback you guys have been giving me. I'm working on slowing my voice down. It's just a process, so please bear with me on that. I have to work on slowing my voice down a lot. It's just going to take some time, so I hope that it's not too grating, and if it is, just let me know. I'm going to try and slow down some more for you guys. One of those things where I'm so used to to talking fast because it's my normal way of speaking that I don't notice I do it until I listen to myself do it back, and then by that point it's too late to go back and start redoing it. So from then on I have to go and slow my voice down. So if someone could just, like, you know, hit me up on Twitter or something, like, make sure you slow your voice down next time, that'll be great. That'll help me out a lot. I guess speaking of Twitter, my social medias, I use Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat quite a lot. Snapchat stories to, you know, just tease different things like music or the games that I'm playing. Twitter, same thing there, except Twitter doesn't get it immediately. Twitter gets it a little bit later. Twitter, I go on there, you'll see me retweet stupid things that I find funny. Nothing like to do with memes or vines, I just think those are funny. Instagram is also where you'll see pictures of the progress that I'm making. Twitter is where you'll hear about or see me writing about the progress I'm making, what step I'm on. And Snapchat is where you'll see like things like the music that I'm playing, which, by the way, the music that was playing in this entire background, which is playing right now, and it's going to play at the end of the title card, or the end screen card, is going to be, it's by Jasepi Kicks, and it is called 6 Cents. If you want to check that song out, it is on his SoundCloud and on his channel, which I will have links in both the description, or I'll have links to that in the description below. So if you want to check those out, that's great on me for you, I guess. If you want to check those out, that's right there for you guys to check out. Next game after this will be Shadow of Mordor, just like I said I was going to do, and then from there I don't know where I'm going to go. If you guys want to leave suggestions about what I should do next for my next deep dive, as well as other ideas for different content that I can do, leave a suggestion below in the comments and let me know where I'm at. Also, let me know how I'm doing, obviously. Also, I discovered on YouTube yesterday that there's a dude who posts literally just a picture of an orange on his channel and has over 3,000 subscribers, which makes me sad because all he's doing is putting a picture of an orange spinning around with the like button. And I'm like, oh, okay. So if you want to go check out his channel too, sure, I'll link his channel in my description for you guys to check out. A dude posting oranges every day. I think he's on day 22 now. So if you guys really want to check that out, go for it. But yeah, other than that, guys, I got nothing else for you. I really appreciate all your feedback you guys have given me, and I really appreciate you guys sticking around with me, and just, you know, showing your support by liking the videos and sharing them around with your friends or coworkers or whoever you want to show them to, anyone that's interested in video games. Yeah, guys, that's it. I appreciate all your time for taking the time. I appreciate you taking the time to look at this video and check it out and give me your feedback. Much love, fam. I appreciate all of you guys, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.